I really want you to see this video, so the intro is a little different. You get me? And the track that Yeah, I give up. I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried from every angle, and this video is just not getting monetized by YouTube. Straight up not getting monetized. I've tried 7 times, taking it down every time, trying the appropriate edits, and nothing is working. So I wanted you to see it anyway because I think that this is important information. So anything you could do to support the channel and this video, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Hey, I'm really just happy that you're here watching it, but anything that you could do to support us would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much. Welcome back to What's the Obsession True Crime. This video is going to take a look at the Epstein files, particularly focusing on Jeffrey Epstein's island, Little St. James.
It's just for Jeffrey's amusement.
This is going to give you one of the most comprehensive looks into Jeffrey Epstein's island, including some of the footage from dataset 10, Jeffrey Epstein's own phone.
This is my swimming pool. No one's allowed to dock here. My beach.
That's exactly what I can't get out of my head. Trying to make sense of what I was seeing or what I wasn't seeing.
The Epstein files present a stark contrast between good and evil, between wealthy and those in despair. And most of all, what we have learned through the Epstein files is that evil does exist in this world, and evil exists in the highest levels of our society. Of Jeffrey Epstein's several multi-million-dollar properties in Palm Beach, Florida, Manhattan, the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, his luxury apartment in Paris, France, and Little St. James Island in the Caribbean. At this time, it is perhaps Little St. James Island that has been able to show the world in graphic terms the evil that existed in the properties that he owned. This is the first in my series on Jeffrey Epstein's properties that is filled with the information that we have learned through the release of the Epstein files, well, some of them at least. Information that has been made known from victims turned survivors and other visitors of the island. And well, you know, there are those YouTubers that have recently been sneaking on the island to get some footage and to plant a sign from them asking the powers that be to release all of the Epstein files.
That's me stepping foot on Jeffrey Epstein's private island, Little St. James.
I'm on the fucking island! We just made it onto the island. It's time to unredact and uncensor the files and stop protecting these evil people who did unspeakable and ungodly things on this island.
Well, amen to that. In this video, we're going to take a look at everything known about Epstein Island, a tour of the island, some hidden things in the island that I don't think anyone ever wanted you to know about, including a trap door that led right into the ocean. And we're going to hear from some people who worked on Epstein's Island. And of course, we're going to take a look at some of the accounts from Jeffrey Epstein's victims. The island known as Little St. James is a 75-acre private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands that was infamously purchased by Jeffrey Epstein in 1998 for $7.95 million. Epstein developed Little St. James into a heavily secured compound with a main house, guest villas, a helipad, and a prominent blue-roofed temple-like structure. Epstein renovated the island with extensive power and data cabling in 2005, making the island completely self-sufficient. The island of Little St. James is in the Caribbean and is only accessible by private helicopter or boat. From the United States, Epstein's private plane would fly him to St. Thomas International Airport, and then he'd board a helicopter, and it would take him to Little St. James. In a 2012 business pitch, Epstein said that the U.S. Virgin Islands were perfect because they were so isolated. It's notable that in this same pitch, he also said, "I am not a madman." Well, I don't know what the world thinks about that now.
This is my swimming pool. No one's allowed to dock here. My beach.
The design of the structures on Epstein Island, the main house, the guest cabanas, and the staff housing was designed to keep occupants apart from one another, not together like you would normally see on a vacation island. Privacy and comfort on Little St. James depended on more than luxury. Tucked among the island's palm trees and winding paths, a cluster of plain concrete buildings formed the island's hidden backbone. These were the service and utility structures. Storage sheds, workshops, and hidden utility rooms were out of sight from the guest house and main cabana. Water, always scarce on a rocky, private Caribbean island, came from the island's desalination system. This technology was already in place before Jeffrey Epstein's 1998 purchase. The system removed the salt from seawater and produced fresh water for the villas, the pool, and the landscaping. Without this infrastructure, the island's isolation would have made daily living impossible. No pipes connected Little St. James to the mainland, and every drop of water, every watt of power needed to either be generated on the island or brought in. Storage areas handled everything from food to supplies to the spare parts that address the constant damage that sea salt water does to the buildings. Satellite photos and expansion timelines reveal a growing network of support buildings over 2 decades that Jeffrey Epstein owned the island. The island's infrastructure was not just practical, it was strategic. With power, water, and supplies managed from within, movement could be monitored and access tightly restricted. For most visitors, arrival happened at the eastern dock that was shielded by thick foliage. From the eastern dock, a narrow road curved uphill. The road then split towards the island's main compound or wound deeper into the interior of the island. The helipad, perched on the northeastern end, offered a second, more exclusive entry point. Helicopter traffic was frequent enough that it was noticed by residents of the nearby St. Thomas Island. And as we now know, that helicopter traffic included passengers like Jeffrey Epstein himself and his wealthy friends. Speaking of Jeffrey Epstein's wealthy and oftentimes famous friends who visited the island, here's something that you should know. According to Wired, phone tracking data from investigative reports reveals a pattern. Hundreds of unique devices registered at the island over those years, with traffic spikes that do not match official visitor logs. Most phones signaled near the dock or the helipad, then vanished into the island's heart. Very few signals lingered near the central utility zone, suggesting that visitors did not often mix with staff or maintenance crew. One of Jeffrey Epstein's security guards on Epstein Island tells us about how they handled the workers' phones on the island, along with some of the other island protocol that was explained to him when he first started working there. The former Epstein Island security guard explained that when he arrived on the island, he was given a tour, shown where he was going to be staying while he was on the island, and then it was explained to him that when he got there, he would turn over his phone and he would be given a different phone to use while he was on the island. And when he left, he'd be given his personal phone back and the phone he was using would be returned. This, of course, was to ensure that nobody took photos or recorded audio that Epstein didn't want to get off of the island. He was also told that when he encountered guests, he was to pretend he didn't see them, to look down, and to speak to people only when he was spoken to. So we can see that all of the details of the design of Epstein Island, or Little St. James Island, were designed specifically for isolation, to keep people away from one another and to keep them in the place where Epstein wanted them to be. The inner roadways themselves were designed for this purpose, leading people to dock, main house, pool, and guest cabanas. The center of operations for security was isolated in a heavily wooded area in a remote part of the island. The security staff on Epstein Island had a number of jobs they would do to keep the island secure and to keep what was going on the island private from the rest of the world. They would do regular perimeter checks around the island. It was said that it took about 25 minutes to walk the perimeter of the 75-acre island. They would keep detailed logs. Some of them are included in the Epstein Files release. And we see in some of the photos in the Epstein File release that there were complex and vast systems to surveil the entire island, the entire property. In this picture here, there's these 6 hard drives that appear to be connected to video surveillance on the island. This photo here of a piece of paper on that equipment says Zone B, Building 2, Room E. It's not a far stretch to believe that this equipment was used to monitor what was going on in the rooms and throughout the whole property. As we hear from more people that worked on Epstein Island, we're going to see a theme that they now tell us that, looking back, at the time, some disturbing things that they saw on the island, they had to convince themselves that this was okay, that this all makes sense, that there's nothing horrible going on here. We're going to see some other themes, including the fact that the people that worked on Epstein Island were paid an exorbitant amount of money compared to what they were accustomed to making, given the jobs that they were doing. And this is just one example of how Jeffrey Epstein used his wealth to silence people around him so he could commit the atrocious crimes that we now know that he committed in life. There's also a gardener and a former maid on Epstein Island who spoke out and said that they were making 3 to 4 times what they would normally make doing their job. And they both claimed that when they got that job, they were in a really bad place in life and they really needed the money. It was clear that they saw things that were a little off when they first started working there, but when they thought about the obligations they had in their life and how they needed to pay for them, and the money that they were making with Epstein would allow them to solve many troubles in their life, they could then easily turn the other cheek and pretend they didn't see the troublesome things that they saw on the island. It's easy to see from these former employees' interviews and what they have to say that measures were taken to keep employees separate from island guests, so it would reduce the chances of the employees seeing the nefarious activities that were going on Epstein's Island. I feel bad for some of those people that worked on the island. They seem really traumatized by what they saw at the time they worked there, now knowing the evil things that happened on that island. In the 3 million files released in the Epstein Files dump of those files that have been released so far, there was some video footage from Jeffrey Epstein's own phone that can be found in dataset 10. And some of that footage is from Epstein's Island, Little St. James. Let's take a moment to take a look at that. And I do have to warn you that some of this content is graphic, so please, discretion is required here. Oh, and hey, I want you to notice in the first few seconds of this video from Epstein's phone, there is a young woman there with a person's foot in her lap, and she's massaging their foot. We know, of course, that Jeffrey Epstein baited young women into his circle by offering them money to give him a massage. And several of the victims described having to give him a foot massage. Apparently, he really liked them. Many of these videos and images are heavily redacted with these black squares, and then some of them have the sound omitted, and that's probably because you can hear voices of victims in those particular videos. But from what we do see in the videos, like for example here, it's clear to see what is going on here. Oftentimes the people's body parts in the videos look very young, or they'll have things near them like teddy bears.
That's a cute picture because you don't even see your face with all the hair in front of it. That's what I see. You want to see. That's the problem. Like when somebody's hurt, you don't jump in and say something. The bird, the albatross.
We'll see when we get into some of the photos, the additional photos from Epstein Island, that he just loved, with extension cords attached, stored all over the island. And clearly in these video images right here, there's nothing nefarious, but it just gives you a perspective of Epstein's Island from his very own device that he recorded himself, ostensibly. Oh boy, and that is just a fraction of the footage from Little St. James Island that was extracted from dataset 10, which contained 13 hours of video footage with a lot of redactions and, black squares from Jeffrey Epstein's phone. So it is no secret that horrible things, nefarious things were happening on Little St. James Island. So let's get into what exactly those horrible things were. Again, viewer discretion here is required. Architect and designer Robert Couturier was hired by Jeffrey Epstein to remodel some furnishings on his island, some of the buildings. It was so clear to him that something was very wrong on that island. He backed out of the project after a few months and ultimately reported what he observed and suspected to the FBI.
Girls and young women who went on the island were basic prisoners. You couldn't leave.
Virgin Islands prosecutors say that Jeffrey Epstein coerced young girls as young as 12 into with him while on the island. More specifically, there's allegations assault and battery, and very specific ones at that we will unfortunately get into. The United States Virgin Islands filed a trafficking case against Jeffrey Epstein and then his estate that was settled in 2022 for $105 million. The settlement ended a nearly 3-year legal saga for officials in the U.S. territory, which sought to hold Epstein accountable after he was accused of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls and of causing environmental damage on the 2 tiny islands he owned in the Virgin Islands. One victim cited in this lawsuit said she was trapped on the island and tried to escape. She says, "One day, I was in severe distress and afraid. I tried to escape Epstein and others by trying to swim off Little St. James. Epstein and Maxwell maintained control by constantly alternating between sticks of abuse and false carrots of praise. When I was made a cup of tea by Kathy and met with smiles. Epstein, Maxwell, and others made threats and offered bribes, and everyone around normalized this behavior. From my recruiter, her best friend, redacted, Epstein's quote-unquote girlfriend, and again, that is redacted." Oh, how horrible is that? This girl was 15, by the way. Did I mention that? And she was so scared and injured and brutalized that she tried to swim off the island. She also said that when Epstein, Maxwell, and others finally went out and got her and brought her back from the ocean, they took her passport, so she was unable to try to escape again. Other accounts of brutalization on Epstein Island come from many now women who were once young women, or even girls, underage girls. Lisa Phillips, an outspoken and admirable Epstein survivor who now has a podcast called From Now On, where she features the stories of other survivors. I definitely suggest you check it out. It's awesome. In her podcast, she focused one episode on telling her story of what happened, the abuse of Jeffrey Epstein. She starts by telling us that she was invited to the island by a friend of hers, somebody that she was doing a modeling shoot at a nearby island with. She says that she was hanging out with the girls during the day on Epstein Island, and then all of a sudden they're just having dinner, enjoying some fresh seafood, and then this person walks into the room and it's Jeffrey Epstein. Listen to how she describes the techniques he used to gain her trust so later in that evening he could abuse her.
Not long after that, a handsome man with a charming smile walks up. He introduces himself as Jeffrey, shakes my hand and kisses my cheek and sits down right next to me. For hours, Jeffrey focused his attention on all of us, but it was mostly on me. He was incredibly charming and he had a sharp, witty humor that only really intelligent people kind of possess. Jeffrey asked a lot of questions that night, the kind that no man usually bothers to ask you. He casually asked me if I wanted to meet a prince. And I said, sure. And right then, a dark-haired man, the guy I recognized from the pool, walked up and he shook my hand. He stayed only briefly before leaving. What stands out most from my dinner was my deep conversation with Jeffrey. He gave me life-changing advice, making me feel safe, heard, seen, and most importantly, I felt understood.
These techniques used by Jeffrey Epstein to gain Lisa's trust are similar to stories we hear from woman after woman who was once a young woman or underage girl who became a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. He acts intensely interested in these people, whether he is or not interested in them truly, we do not know. But he gives them the kind of attention that earns a person's trust, that makes you feel special, like you're privileged to be in their company. And gosh, this person makes me feel so good, they have to be a good person, right? Well, later that same night, listen to how things took a turn for Lisa Phillips.
So after dinner, we showered and we got ready for bed. We were just hanging out together on the bed, just like talking and feeling great. And then there was a knock at the door. The woman said, Jeffrey is ready for his massage. And I looked at the girl and I said, what massage? I'm not doing a massage. And she said, oh, don't worry. Jeffrey likes massages. No big deal.
If you know anything about Jeffrey Epstein and the way he victimized young girls and women, you know that this sounds very familiar. It's the massage. The way he baits women in and gets them to feel comfortable touching him and being more intimate with him before he brutalizes them. It'll probably also come to no surprise to you that on all of his properties, Jeffrey had multiple massage tables, even spare massage tables, waiting to be utilized if one that was already in use broke. And that includes on Epstein Island. We can see this through many of the photos released in the Epstein files.
We walked through the door. He was lying on a massage bed, face down. I started backing out of the room and I said, I can't do this. Kind of like giggling nervously because I thought everything was just turning kind of weird. She said, no, you have to. Just do what I do. So Jeffrey was being very playful, non-threatening. He was asking a lot of questions about boyfriends and trying to make us feel very comfortable. His questions were very personal now. They were a little different than before. I know he was trying to make me relax and be comfortable. I wasn't comfortable. The whole thing was really weird and it was really awkward. And he would wait for me to kind of do what she was doing. Until after a little while, it wasn't really playful anymore. The energy shifted.
Lisa then describes what happens to her next, and I had to redact that part for the platform. This poor woman, she has become such a powerful person, but I'm just so sorry for what happened to her and the other victims turned survivors by the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and his friends, his horrible company. Lisa Phillips was a model, and Jeffrey Epstein ended up hooking her up with her dream agency, Ford Modeling Agency. And as it turns out, Kate Ford, the current CEO of Ford Modeling Agency, was Epstein's personal friend. And his connection to people like Kate Ford at the head of modeling agencies and other large institutions and powerful, wealthy companies is all part of the ring that Jeffrey Epstein manufactured. And we're not going to go into complete detail on that topic in this video because we're focusing on Little St. James Island here, but more to come on that about Jeffrey Epstein's network and the trafficking ring that he curated. Speaking of models and modeling agencies, Juliette Bryant was another victim turned survivor of Jeffrey Epstein. Juliette Bryant ended up being employed as a Victoria's Secret model. On the podcast, The Conspiracy Files, a great podcast that has done a lot of work exposing the Epstein files, Juliette Bryant tells her story.
Then the phone rang and they said it was Sarah Kellen, one of the girls who posed as a modeling agent. And they said, pack a small bag, we're going to the Caribbean. So I assumed it was for a modeling shoot. I didn't have any money with me. It was very frightening. And then as soon as the airplane took off from Teterboro Airport, I was driven to the airport there, and Epstein started touching me forcibly, and the other girls were laughing. And I got a terrible shock, and I thought, oh my God, these people are going to try to kill me. I suddenly realized, oh my God, my family might never see me again. And in a way, they didn't see me as I had been. It changed me. Like, it wasn't me, like it totally changed me, all of this. It freaked me out.
We hear sentiments echoed just like that from Julia's statement from many of Jeffrey Epstein's victims turned survivors that what happened to them at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein changed them and scarred them for life, and you cannot blame them. Abuse is a very serious thing.
And, then we landed on the island and I was being called to his room and then on the first day it was just me, but then the next day another girl was brought in. And then as time went on, more and more girls just kept coming and going. So it was just, it was very, very frightening for a young person to be stuck in a situation like that. Even at my age now, I'm 43. If I was taken somewhere with people like that, I would be petrified even at my age now. It was really frightening. Like I said before, it really changed me being there. And also, like I've said before, one of the times when he took me to the bedroom in the Caribbean, I saw him literally shapeshift into like the devil. His head went big and there were these big black eyes and there were ridges on his head and horns. He looked like a sort of reptilian, alien, devil creature. And like with a mouth and a long tongue. And I got so freaked out because I saw that happen, and then I looked away, and then I looked back and it was him again. So, and also another interesting fact is that apparently the island is in the Bermuda Triangle, or very nearby. Apparently it's in the Bermuda Triangle.
Wow, so that is a lot. And you know what? I suggest that you watch the entire interview on Conspiracy Files with Colin with Juliette Bryant. It's a really great interview, and listening to the whole interview, I find her, like the other victims turned survivors, to be incredibly, incredibly credible. Now, she talks about, this vision of seeing him turn into the devil. And I take what these women say at face value. And if anybody were to appear as a devil to another human being, I believe it would be Jeffrey Epstein. I think it's also very interesting, as Juliette told us, that Epstein's Island is in the Bermuda Triangle. Check that out. And it was on Epstein Island where Virginia Giuffre says she was to Prince Andrew. In an interview with 60 Minutes Australia, Virginia talks about encountering the prince on the island and the horrific experience that she had there. Remember that interior designer Robert Cordier? Listen to what he has to say in regards to Jeffrey Epstein's plan for the interior design on Epstein Island.
And inside the house, there was another little room with computers. And I said, what is this room? And he said, this room is for the girls when they have fun. And they play with their computers. The whole house was very odd because we were on the beach and the house had heavy dark curtains everywhere. The windows were never really opened. It felt terrible. And he also asked me, he said, I want to build a big TV room, a movie cinema underneath the pool, and I will furnish it with beds. Everybody knew what was happening on that island. Even his staff, people worked for him.
And now, fortunately, with the release of the Epstein files, well, the ones that were released, we do know so much more about that island and what happened on that island. But there are still many, many files that need to be released. In the second part of this episode of Jeffrey Epstein's Island, an inside look at the graphic secrets the Epstein files hold, we are going to look more at the interior of the buildings, what he was hiding in the drawers and cabinets and in the safes, what was going on in that temple, what was that all about, and some of the interesting, perverted, and at times sick artwork that can be found on Epstein Island. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you do. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.